And Gabrielle said she had a question once the recording started. Yes.
Okay, so on the labs, I know we've done it as like a million times. You give the instructions on how to like link it to Blackboard, and I've done the majority of it. Now, it says I have a lab average, but then like my individual for each labs aren't there. Is the way it's supposed to do it?
Are you talking about on Blackboard or on Launchpad?
Blackboard. Launchpad doesn't have any.
I think that what the issue is you said you followed the instructions the way I said to do it. You didn't follow the instructions the way that the software said to do it. Okay.
I basically launched it through Blackboard.
Okay. Well, I think that what they said was it's possible that your individual Launchpad quizzes won't show in Blackboard, but your lab average will. But for the people who didn't do it the right way, their lab average won't even show in Blackboard. So I'll have to, let me see.
So I have this lab average, and that's because I've only done like 5 of them. But then this lab average isn't here, and then these are all my others. Like I've definitely done. Like I only have 5 left, so.
Okay, yeah, I probably need to go and clean some stuff out. Could you email me and ask me to clean out the grade book?
Sure.
Because it's got the lab stuff from last semester too, the way we used to do the labs, like in 1301, where it was all built in, and so it still has 2 lab average columns, I guess, that you're able to see. I thought the person who came in and put the new labs in would turn off the old lab column, so I didn't even think to look there. But yeah, you can have me do that, and I'll do that. But I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's not supposed to just show your lab average, and that's weird that your lab average shows. Wait. I have a question. Have you already done them all?
No,
or done?
I have 5 left.
But you've done a lot. I'm wondering if it's giving you an average based on how you've done or how much you've completed.
Definitely not how I've done, because I went through and did all of the guessing like you did. So there are some that are like the percentages.
Okay. So it's literally that's based on just how many you have left to complete. Okay. And if people are completists, they can go ahead and complete. But
I probably only finish them today.
Because I'm curious as to when you complete, what that will show in that lab average column, because I want to see. Yeah, I'm curious. Yes, sir.
Will we ever go over our essays before they're due?
When you say go over our essays before they're due, what do you mean by that?
Peer review or anything?
No, the only time that'll happen is on the research paper. Research paper will be the only time that we do a peer review in class. Yeah. Other questions about things before we get to what we're doing today?
Oh yeah. This is mentioned on the first essay until Friday, right? Not today.
Here's the deal. So technically, the due date is tonight.
Right.
But I will probably end up grading English 1301 papers first because they're new, they're scared, they don't know what college is. So I tend to try to grade those papers first, so that they see their first papers, back pretty quick. Your papers are generally pretty easy to grade, the census analysis. So, while I probably could grade them quicker, I generally wait just on this first paper because I think that y'all have been around, the block, so to speak. So y'all kind of are maybe less worried about the fact that you're good students. And additionally, with the revision, I think that since you can revise as many times as you want to after I've graded your paper, I'm going to be clear on that too. Some people got confused and thought that you could only revise before your paper due date. That's not. You can revise after it's due too. So you can revise all the way until week 14, day 2. You can revise for a long time. But I don't know. I feel like it's important to get those first papers to the 1301 students quickly, so they know kind of how to go from there. Whereas y'all's first paper really isn't, I don't think, as hard, and it's more kind of free form. So, trying to remember if the question that you asked was in there.
It's due on Friday.
Yeah. So because of that, because I'll be grading their papers first, even though your technical due date is tonight. I likely am not going to be grading it this weekend. I probably won't get to it until sometime next week or next weekend. So feel free to like wait until Thursday if you need to.
Is it okay to go ahead and turn it in?
Yeah, it's fine to turn it in. Yeah, I've had some people who turned it in like a week ago, so no issues there at all. Yeah.
Is there a reason that like when you do labs, like I did the diagnostic one and then like maybe 5 other ones, they don't show up on my grade at all?
Yeah, that's what Gabrielle was mentioning. They're not showing up as individual grades, but do you have a lab average column?
No.
So yours isn't even a lab average column.
No.
Now, when you entered all your stuff, okay?
It says you've completed this, blah, blah, blah.
Like, well, I mean, when you started using Launchpad, did you follow the instructions on the cardboard, or did you do it the way I said in class? Like, did you go to Blackboard, click out, then enter all your stuff, or did you?
That's usually how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to go to Blackboard and then it
click an assignment.
Click assignment, and it takes you there, and then you're like, oh, it's like, are you already logged in, or you have the code, whatever, blah, 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 and you do it that way. That's how
Okay.
it is for my other class, and it works just fine.
Now, there's multiple lab average columns in your grades.
Yeah.
Have you looked at both?
Mhm.
Have you looked at both of the lab average columns?
There's only one column. It just goes here, and it shows my actual grade.
There should be 2. Like one says lab average, and yet another one says lab average as well.
I guess I can't see. Well, under submitted it doesn't say anything, and then under upcoming it just says learning curve.
Just do all.
Here, I can show you what mine is.
I think Gabrielle was having a similar issue, and so I told her to email me, and I'll try to get rid of all the irrelevant stuff. And she already sent me the email, so
I
that
have a
should work.
lab average, but then I have another lab average, and
But how long did it take for yours to come up like that? Because
Oh yeah, now they
it's
said
gonna
it's
take
not
about
immediate.
yeah, it's not immediate. Like it's gonna have to take like 24 hours for their system to then update our system.
I did it like a week ago.
Well, then it should have updated. There might be a refresh button that you can push, or a refresh button that I can push, because I've heard of that. They said that I can go to like Launchpad and hit refresh, and it'll pull all y'all's grades over. I don't know. Email me about that and say the issue, and then I'll look at it, see if I can figure it out. I feel like that's gonna be like the thing that I say to people all the time regarding Launchpad.
Isn't that what
Email
the
me
learning
about
curve is?
Huh?
Is that what the learning curve is?
Yeah.
Learning curves are all the quizzes
lab.
for the labs. Yeah. So again, Gabrielle's case, she said it's not showing her learning curve grades on
But
the learning
see-
curve on Blackboard, but it's showing it in the lab average.
It's weird when you finish.
Other questions before we move on? 2 very, very important things. And when I say very, very important things, I talked to the other class and I told them, y'all aren't as chatty as the other class, but I said, here's what we're going to do. I feel like the real value in this class is in discussion, so I figure like that's just what we're going to do. Bless you. Right? That's what. Okay. I just want to make sure that that's what that was. How about check it? It was a sneeze? Yep. Bless. Okay, yeah. So that's a verification. I'm pretty sure that if you sneezed once, you sneeze again. That's it. We talked, and I mean, most of the quizzes that y'all have to do over the literature are going to be, as you saw, factual. What happened in the story. I'm going to try to stay away from the most obvious stuff, like what's the twist and occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge? He didn't get hanged. Like basically the stuff that like you could just, oh wait, Wikipedia. Oh, there it is. I'm going to try to stay away from that stuff and ask questions that you might still be able to get, by wandering around Spark Notes, but still you have to pay attention to the story and have read it and remember having read it so that you can scroll back through it. My questions are mostly going to be designed in that way. But it's going to be just comprehension style. So that the real value in this course, did I talk to you about this the other day, about what I think the real value is, especially since your essays are all kind of based on, with the exception of the critical evaluation, which I think is going to appeal more to the scientifically minded people, I think. The rest is going to be sort of, how do I relate this literature to the real world and experience and humanity and stuff like that. And so I figure as a result of that, maybe discussing the literature is going to be the most valuable thing we can do anyway. I mean, when do you have a chance to discuss literature now in really any class? I just don't think that happens anymore. I feel like it's valuable, but just nobody does it. And I think that, as a result, you have all the turmoil that we have in the world today. Because people don't read literature or talk about it anymore. I mean, there are public officials who don't read books. It's terrifying. Terrifying. Everything condensed into like sound bites. So, the first thing I want to do is apologize not for the readings this week. The readings are all great. Although going back and reading Lottery again, and this is before I get any commentary, going back and reading Lottery again, I found it to be kind of boring reading it later in life. It's still.
I guess it's because of what I got out of it.
Didn't I say before any commentary? My gosh, calm down. I mean, we'll get to Lottery, don't worry. But the thing I really wanted to apologize for, I mean, we can get back to Lottery if that's what you want to do next. Well, first of all, Good Man is hard to find. I feel like I don't really need to warn you of that. It's more fun if you just don't know what's happening before you go in.
Right.
And you're like, goofy comedy, wait, murder? But I did not warn anybody about Battle Royal, and for that, I definitely apologize. I should have said before you read it, you will be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And you will find, yeah.
The entire
Yeah, like there's really no point at which it stops.
No.
Or it's like easy.
It just gets worse. It just gets worse.
Yeah.
There was no easing into it. It's just
Like,
No, yeah, it's like
Go.
like at first we were like, oh cool, he's gonna get to do a speech, and then you were like, wait, what?
he's got
And then it just keeps going.
it just keeps
Yeah.
never stopping.
Yeah, it was, and I read it really late at night.
Like at first, I was
Yeah.
supposed to go one way.
Oh, late at night. Oh, that's not a.
Yeah, I didn't.
That's not a before bed
Well,
reading.
I know, and I read it before bed. I was like, I gotta
Yeah,
get
I
this
read it after I
done.
got off work at 1
And
o'clock.
it was
in the
horrible.
morning. Regret it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really
I also
it's
tried
something
to eat
else.
a sandwich while reading it.
I one semester actually I guess I sort of experienced it in the same way that you guys did when I first read it, because I don't know how I managed to do this. Probably because most of my professors were white. I went through school and never had to read the story. Not in undergrad, not in high school, not in grad school. Never once read it. And so I imagine we mostly had just white authors assigned. And then finally, I see this story, Battle Royal, which I'd always read was one of the greatest American short stories, and I was like, I'll just assign it. So I assigned it, not having read it. And then a week before we had class over, I was like, man, I got to make this quiz. And so I read the story and went, holy. I want to say the word, but I was like, I'd said a lot of expletives actually, just one after the other, holy this, holy that. And was like, good Lord. It was like at the same time I was both destroyed and felt like what I'd read though was like really important in a way that it was hard to like put into words.
It was like a train wreck.
No, not a train wreck. It was.
You wanted to look away, but you couldn't.
No, I didn't. I wanted to. I felt like it was my obligation to keep reading, I guess. And a train wreck's not like that. It's like, I see a train wreck and I'm like, I mean, I'd look, not look. This was something I felt like if I looked away, I'd be doing something wrong.
He'd be missing
You feel
out.
the guilt like he did in the story.
Yeah, I felt like I'd feel the guilt of not acknowledging the history of what went on and the terrible atrocities. And I think that's a huge problem today is people like to pretend like the past just didn't happen.
I'm going for a history major. I'm very
I'm
well
also
aware
a
of
history
that.
major.
Yeah.
That's need to dive deeper.
People act like, oh man, we got to watch out for this, guys. We do, because I don't know if you know, like the schools actually. This is not just us. I mean, the state is essentially doing this, but the state of Texas gives us like bonus points on like a point system. Gives us bonus points when we have STEM majors, so like science, technology, engineering, math. And humanities are often considered a liability. Like they're like, how do you get a job doing that? Like, I mean, what is that for? What purpose does it serve society? I mean, it's just like that. I mean, I had a student recognize it in his first essay for my lit course as a freshman. I mean, I figure that maybe older people can figure it out too. That if we just have people who know science and think, hey, let's just innovate and not think about whether we should, That's problematic. Maybe we should have people around saying, "Hey, we shouldn't do that. It's a bad idea." And I think that I don't know what to think about it all. So tell me I mean, y'all said it was I mean, we can talk about whichever story you want.
It was just really graphic.
I
don't
just
like
think that
blood.
those kind of stories really engage you
Okay,
to
they
reading.
drew my attention a
Because
lot.
when you read boring stories, like in the middle of the story, you're just ready to throw the book out. And
Oh, it
these
was
kind of
horrible.
stories, it's like you just want to get to the end of it.
It's like page after page.
So make
Yeah,
you
no, I'll
engage into
admit, like-
literature.
Yeah.
Like I think I read it faster than most. Like A Rose for Emily felt like it took me hours to read, but this one was.
This one.
I mean, I read it fairly quickly. The lottery just like blew my mind because at the end they were like, "There's stones." What? So I was
The which one?
expecting the lottery.
Oh, lottery. I thought you said the water. I was like confused.
I was expecting the lottery to be more like Hunger Games, and she told us not to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did you say not
But
to
to
mention
me,
it?
But I didn't think that it was anything like that.
to
But it's really just the very beginning of Hunger Games.
To me,
Oh.
Like when they all draw.
Like when they say, if you're if you're not a sinner, cast the first stone. If you have not sinned, or something like that. That's kind of what it reminded me of. Because I mean, really in Hunger Games, they didn't bring everybody to the center of the ring and just draw a name.
I mean, I'm gonna be really honest. It really reminded me of a cult. I thought they were making
Yeah,
a sacrifice.
like a cult.
Yeah.
before Christ
I mean-
kind of thing. Like
No, but people really did that. I mean, back when farming and agriculture were like the only ways, and you had to like go out and work and farm yourself. Like
Were they trying to ration everything?
people
Is
would
that
do
why?
that. I think they were just sacrificing so that they would have good crops,
Oh.
so that they would have a good harvest.
I didn't know. I was just thinking like maybe they had too many.
I mean,
people.
you've always heard like
They
little
said
stories
something
like
about
that.
something about corn, and then they had a say about
Yeah.
corn.
They said
Yeah.
that kept them from being cavemen.
Something like that.
Yeah, keep them from
Because they were
being-
talking
like they had
about-
too many people, so they needed
They
to
were
Yeah.
talking
take
about
somebody
getting
out
rid of
every
it.
year at the same time so they could have enough food to feed everybody
Yeah,
else. But
he says lottery in June, corn be heavy soon. is
Yeah,
what he
there you
says.
go.
Because he's talking about like it's a bad idea to get rid of it because then, what are we gonna do? Like this is
Y'all really
nobody-
focused on that.
person's gonna eat.
And I think I looked at the Wikipedia because I was like, where are people getting this? And I did notice that it had it on the Wikipedia in like the short 4-line summary. I don't know if that's where people were really paying attention to that line about the corn.
Oh no, I just got that out of reading it.
But I felt that it didn't, because of the way they mentioned the other communities, it said like some communities have gotten rid of it. I felt like really probably every community had their own reason for keeping it. They couldn't remember why, but like you go to one and they're like, oh, it's corn soon. And say over here it's like, fall brings stones, makes no bones. Nobody dies that fall. I don't know. Like it could be anything. Like some little rhyming phrase they've come up with, or
Just
some.
anything to
It
like
seems like the
basically
old man
justify
was
it.
the
Yeah. What now?
It seems like the old man's the only reason they did it because he was the only one that was like.
Okay with it.
The one that had the little black box.
Yeah, he was-
Little
he was
kids
all
seem
for it.
pretty okay with it.
The little
Yeah,
kids seemed
they
to
have the
get
little
it.
rocks.
They were like,
Looking for
They're
it.
gathering the best rocks.
Yeah, they were all excited for
Like
it.
which one?
Like, we're gonna
Which
get
one's
rocks.
gonna hit harder? Like what?
That was messed up to me that the little kids were like almost excited for it.
Well, they probably didn't actually realize. Like if you think about it, if it,
I
like
think they knew what they were doing.
And then all the ladies were excited too, and then when it gets to the point where this lady get picked,
Yeah,
or her
she's
family
like,
get
"It's not
picked, then she's
fair,
like,
it's
it's
not
not fair. But I mean, on the other hand, if it was somebody else's family, she would have been throwing rocks as well. So it's,
Yeah, I always, for some reason, later, like remembering it before I went back and read it again, I remembered that the Hutchinson lady, she was the one that got stoned. I remembered her being like, the whole ritual's not fair, kind of from the beginning of the story. But I don't think that actually happens in the story, does it? It's not until like it actually comes down to her family that she starts saying it's not fair.
yeah.
And I'd always
Yeah,
remembered
she
that
shows
she
up
was the
late.
one saying the whole. Yeah, she shows up late,
She
right?
shows up late and she's like okay with it or whatever. She's like, what did I miss or kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then she gets picked or whatever, and she starts saying, you didn't give him time. You didn't give him time.
Like I kept feeling that there had been some character development for her in the past, but there's not. It's just she's just one of the other people. And so I don't know, going back and reading it, like I felt like my brain, I think, was trying to come up with a reason why she was the one, is because she's the one questioning it, and so random fate picks her. But no, it's just. You think it's because she showed up? Don't show up late, children. Fate may pick you.
Even the guy with the broken leg had to be included. His wife had to draw for him. So, like.
Yeah, he's at home and they got to draw him. I really didn't like. I just wish everybody was like drawing individually, but they couldn't do that. I mean, I hated how it was like by family. Then.
And then each family person drew.
Did you know that story is how I designed that class last semester, where we all like wrote live or die on the piece of paper? Like that. I read the lottery and then went, yeah, y'all, you weren't in that class. Spoilers, everybody lived. But it was originally my plan in that class was we'd all, instead of like picking who gets some points or whatever, which ended up being fake anyway, but the plan was like we'd all grab a ball of paper that I would give everybody, and then like at the end, once we narrowed it down to one person, we'd pelt them with paper. And then I thought later that could end up being a very traumatic experience.
That sounds cool.
It would be weird too, because it might have this weird side effect of having, because there's just something weird about having a teacher be an authority figure that can tell you what to do, and even if it's something crazy, you're just like, all right, I can do it. So if I say everybody pelt this person with papers, you're like, it's just papers, it's not gonna hurt. And somehow it like brings everybody who's throwing papers together, and then that other person somehow gets ostracized. And it may be a subtle thing the rest of the semester, but it might all really persist like psychologically, and I didn't want to like risk that. So I did something that was literally like we picked the person by rolling the dice, this side of the room, this table, so that it ended up being you. Have you been okay since? The first semester I didn't tell him fast enough that it wasn't real. Like I made the kid wait till like near the end of class, then told him, and then I went, oh, that was a terrible idea, because I asked him after class, I said, is that okay? He's like, I wish you'd told me it wasn't real sooner, because I felt bad the whole class and couldn't pay attention to anything you said. And I was like, that's a really good point. Actually, is that what happened? No, I don't. I think I did tell him at the right time. I think my memory's trying to change itself again. I hate when this happens. Have I told y'all like the problems of memory? Remember I told you like I read Lottery and I remembered her being a major character, but she's not. She's just some lady. Your brain like changes things over time. You don't even realize how it does it. I'm sure I do it more than most because I find a lot of value in stories, and so my brain will shift reality. That's weird, but.
And the way your brain works, it's kind of like all over the place. So.
Yeah. I think of possibilities, and then those possibilities become reality, which is it's worse than for other people. I guess. They even found that people, though, normal people do this too, and people with PTSD, it's even worse. Like whatever the most traumatic experiences you can remember from your memory, you probably don't remember it accurately. You think that you do. You're like, it's burned in my brain, but it's actually probably not even remotely what actually happened. You may not remember where you were, when you were, who was with you. Like it all might be completely inaccurate.
You're a kid and you have an accident and you get really hurt, but then like you're afraid of that thing for the rest of your life, but then you try it again and it's not really scary, but because you were a kid, it was really scary for you. Does that make sense? Am I good?
That might, but it happens even as adults. The study they did was, did I mention this last time with the study of 9/11? Like right after 9/11, they asked like 2,000 people what they did on 9/11. Like what they, this is 9/11. Today's 9/11. Wow, it's crazy. 17th anniversary. What?
You didn't plan this?
No, I didn't plan this. But it was they studied like 2,000 different people and asked them, where were you, what were you doing? And they basically got all the details about their story. Then they came a year later and asked them the same stuff. Almost everybody's stories changed. They were in a new place. They were doing something completely different. They weren't even in the same building. Some were outside of the city when they the first time, and now they suddenly were in the city, like a block from ground zero. Like nobody remembered what they were doing. There were a select few, of course, who did, and there are some people who can remember, but the vast majority of people got it completely wrong. This had already sort of been presaged. Do you remember y'all heard Columbine before, the school shooting that started all the school shootings?
Mm-hmm.
Because of how like strange and gruesome and planned it was. Well, there was a kid in the library who said that some girl was pulled out from under the table and they said, do you believe in God? And she said yes, and they shot her. And he said that, and so everybody's like, "Oh, the girl who said yes." So there was the nice girl, whatever girl's challenge. There's some challenge of some girl like to be nice to people. You ever heard of that girl? The first girl shot on Columbine, I think. What was it, Rachel? Yeah. And there was another girl who was shot in the library, and her mom put out 2 books as well. Not Rachel's mom, some other girl. But when they asked the kid a year later to say, like, where were you when this girl got pulled out from underneath? Because nobody else remembered that girl being pulled out from underneath the table. Nobody heard that happen. They said, I was just cowering. He came up to her, I think, shot her, and then they left. There was no, like, picking or asking of questions. And later the kid who said that she was pulled out from under the table and asked, do you believe in God? He couldn't remember where he was in the room. He didn't get any of the details the same from the previous time that he told the story. So it was apparently very traumatic for him from the start, and it was traumatic for everybody, but he got nothing right. So his story couldn't even really be corroborated. It's just that's how trauma works. Somebody was asking me about like Ralph Ellison, because Ralph Ellison is an African-American author who wrote Battle Royal. Somebody in the other class was saying, I mean, to what degree did he personally experience stuff like this? Like, is that where he got the inspiration for the stuff that happens in the story? And that, I haven't read his letters. I haven't read like his talks about that kind of stuff. So I mean, I really don't know. I can't say for any certainty whether he went through anything quite as awful as this. I mean, what do you all think? Do y'all think he literally went through something as bad as this, or do you think it's more of a symbolic or metaphorical representation of the people that he really knew and what they were like on the inside, and he's sort of creating like almost like a mythology out of how bad
It seemed
they
too
are?
detailed to be fake, like for like him to like
I don't know
embellish
that
it, and I think he actually went through it.
I don't think he went through it exactly word for word. I think he went through something similar, and then he made it a fictional story.
He had to have had some traumatic experience in his life, but I don't think it was too serious.
Right. It was way
I don't
too
think
graphic
it was
for
as
him
to
to
the
have
extent
to
of him
pull.
being on a carpet getting electrocuted.
Like, it was way
I
too
think-
graphic for him
I
to
think
have
he
just
might have
imaginated that.
been in that kind of predicament where he not exactly had to fight to give his speech, but like a lot of obstacles got thrown at him before he could actually give that speech, because in the way the book said, it's just like they said, oh hey, I want you to come give a speech at this place where all the rich white men of this place.
But they
will
didn't
be.
tell him that he was gonna have to do all that.
But they didn't tell him he was gonna have to do all that to do it. So.
Now, are you saying this was a character, or do you say Ellison had to
Like,
go
I
through
feel like
this?
Ellison had to go through like maybe
Something similar?
something similar to be where he is or something. Like, I mean, because he was talking about how I don't know if that was his real grandfather or something, like maybe his grandfather gave him words like that and tried to keep him like, look, this is how life's gonna be, so you're gonna have to fight for what you want, pretty much. Because that's how I looked at it. Like, life's gonna throw you so many obstacles, you have to fight for what you wanna be successful in or whatever.
So you feel like the maybe he'd seen stuff like this, but maybe he didn't personally experience physically going and fighting, but he knew that there was going to be like the obstacles, and he had a grandpa who told him maybe some similar stuff to
Yeah.
that. Oh, okay. Radios, do you still have something to say?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh.
No, different name. So what was the next? I don't know. I feel like there. Oh yes.
The boxing thing that they were doing, that wasn't uncommon back then.
Yeah, I felt like that definitely was something real he knew about and maybe incorporated. Yeah.
I've seen a few movies from like that are set in like that time period, and a lot of them have like people boxing, and some of them even have like you're fighting for your life because the person that loses gets killed.
I think he incorporated a lot of little facts that back then were used or were implemented with slaves. You know, when he says, I have to be careful in the wording of my speech, when he says it's people's responsibility, and then he changed it to people or to social equality or social responsibility, and then he changed it for social equality, and then he kind of like thinks about it and he's like, I have to say kind of like the right thing, otherwise they're gonna kill me or they're gonna do something to me. So I think he incorporated a lot of little facts in his story that represented slavery and injustice, and like I don't know, a lot of things that people went through back in those times. I guess.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of incorporation. It's just it seems so real. Like it seems.
Yeah.
Now I know that I think Gabrielle, you might have said it seems so real. There's no way it was all completely made up. Was that what you said? But I mean, I know that there are definitely parts that were made up. Like the part that really gets it started off with me, where it's really uncomfortable. When he says battle royal, I didn't really know what to think because this is pre-Fortnite, pre-PUBG. I didn't really know what a battle royal was. I was like, okay, I don't know what that is. So when they basically like it was a fight to the last person that wins, I was like, oh, okay. So I guess no man's standing except one. And I didn't really have a concept for what was to come, but I got started off being really uncomfortable with the naked lady, like dancing in front of them with the
that was
flag tattoo, and then the detail it gets with the guys and what they were experiencing in that moment and how awkward it was for them. And I was like, yeah, this is just really cruel to do a bunch of kids who've probably never seen a woman naked before, like first time. And then, but the part that makes me think it's not real is she's got an American flag tattoo on her belly. And I was like, that just seems a little too symbolic. Like, there's no way, like, the woman just really... And what a weird spot to have a tattoo.
Right. He changed the details a little bit, but
Yeah.
I think, like, the graphicness of the rest...
I think battle royals must have been common enough at the time that he maybe incorporated it, but I wonder if he had to... I don't know.
You'd have to be just a little bit psychopathic.
I think... Well, I don't think he'd have to be a psychopath, but he's heard enough stories. I mean, there all the time there were stories of, which this has come out way later, but there were white women who were attracted to black men and would go and have sex with them and like start a relationship, kind of have a thing on the side. And when they got found out, they claimed they were raped. And then the men would be given the electric chair, and they'd have to defend themselves in court, and they couldn't because the white jury of their peers were convicting them, instantly. And then it'd come out years later that they were having a relationship, and it did. There was one guy who said, he just represented himself in court, I think, and he said one of the black guys that's happened to, he said. What was it? It was pretty admirable. He said, it was a time, he said, I didn't do those things, but I don't want my need for something to mess up this frontier of blacks and whites getting along together that's been growing. So he didn't want to cause problems. So he basically in his speech before he got convicted, he said, I don't want to cause any problems or, make a problem for the white and black races working together. So and I was like, that's a weird thing to say. I'd be like, no, I'm not guilty. Please argue that heavily in court. But maybe he just realized the futility of it. And so, if there were enough stories like that going around, and you got to know about that in your community. It's going to be like, yeah, supposedly, and it's like, that didn't happen. That they've been having that thing on the side for weeks. I know. But they can't go and be evidence in court because the white jury is not going to think that a black person talking in court is going to count as evidence. So, bad things going on at that time. And I'm sure Ellison knew enough stories that he could imagine how bad. Stephen King has not seen people mutilated before, but he can imagine it.
But he also
it's like, what? Remember that time that car got angry and came for all of us? I remember that. Let's write that in a book. So we all have, and some people have said oh, he must be crazy. Well, he said, no, I write this so I don't go crazy.
There's been a thing where he had a drug addiction. He battled with that for a while. And if you
he was cocaine, wasn't it?
If you read his books before drugs, you read his books before, while he was doing them, and then after when he gets sober, his writing is really different.
Huh.
In a significant way. So they made a sequel to The Shining.
Yeah.
He wrote it. It's called Dr. Sleep. And it's not even comparable. It's a waste of 600 pages. It's bad.
So you're saying Cocaine
Compared to
King's
the
a lot
Shine.
better
Like,
than...
Infinity can be a sequel.
Well, that's sad. Well, I mean, I'm sure anybody on their, like, 50th book is going to seem like they're,
Bored.
you know... Yeah, there's not much left.
That's true, but I feel like his writing was better when he was on drugs. Even though that's a bad thing to say.
Well,
I mean, back then he had a motivation.
still not a good enough reason.
When he got sober.
I'm gonna still say drugs are bad. That's what I'm gonna go with.
Yeah. I'm not saying that.
With the Soldier's Home, is it kind of like, I don't want to say like,
Now we haven't read that one yet.
but it's this week's weekend.
It's coming up. Yeah.
No matter what they do.
Okay.
I'll wait.
I don't want to spoil it for you if you've already read it.
I do have a question though. At the
Okay.
end, he accepts the scholarship,
Mm-hmm.
and the scholarship is to go to Black people only university, which to me is like, okay, so you're fighting for equality, but then yet you're taking the scholarship to go to.
I mean, education is education, any way you look at it, but
Especially
yeah,
when
it seems
it's
like
Yeah, it's just contradictory.
undermining his
To me, it was
grandmother.
like, yeah, you're
Even
fighting
more.
for it. I would not. I would
Yeah, I
probably
would
take it, or.
But
I
it
would
was a
probably
free education, and it could
Yeah,
have
I
made
mean,
it a lot
education is
easier for
education.
him to further his purpose. For him to
What do you-
fight for equality.
What do you think about that?
Is yours related to that?
Well, what year was this? Like, I've been trying to figure that out. Like, it gives you like a
In my
timeline.
thoughts, it was like, that was probably when they only had the state for the Black people to go to versus
segregated.
they can't go to a segregated
Because
college.
it shows
or
this
something.
when he was alive, but it doesn't tell like when the story happened.
1148 to 1159. Let's see.
1952, it was written.
Is that right?
It was written.
Because he said he died in 94. It was just...
Well, Invisible Man was published in 1952, which is the entire book. This is the first chapter of it. And
There's
then,
a date at the very end.
yeah, publishes a short story in 1947.
Yeah.
So 1947 is definitely, I would consider, pre-civil rights movement. I mean, stuff had not gotten underway at all.
So like right in that time frame, like World War II-ish area.
Well, it says he was a
Yeah.
Marine merchant during World War II. So, ammunition refineries and.
Yeah, he could have seen all kinds of stuff. And I know that there was the injustice would have been fresh that, you know, blacks are fighting alongside white soldiers yet not equal at home. Yeah, it's just the weirdest thing. So, I mean, I'm sure that if he accepted the scholarship to the black college, I mean, there wasn't really an alternative. I mean, that was in the 60s that became something he could have done. Yeah, so I mean, I guess he would have accepted the scholarship. But there is something that he mentions about the scholarship, and nobody's really, I mean, y'all have mentioned this a little bit, but we haven't really hit the depth of it yet. But talking about the dream at the end. So like 1159, you know, he says, I was overjoyed. I did not even mind when I discovered that the gold pieces I had scrambled for were brass pocket tokens advertising a certain make of automobile. Oh, did y'all read that? Yeah, the electric rug money that they got was not even real. When I reached home, everyone was excited. Next day, the neighbors came to congratulate me. I even felt safe from grandfather, whose deathbed curse usually spoiled my triumphs. I stood beneath his photograph with my briefcase in hand and smiled triumphantly into his stolid black peasant's face. It was a face that fascinated me. The eyes seemed to follow everywhere I went. And you're like, okay, so what was that deathbed curse? And it was where he said, as he was dying, and the last thing he said, son, after I'm gone, I want you to keep up the good fight. I never told you, but our life is a war, and I have been a traitor all my born days, a spy in the enemy's country ever since I give up my gun back in the Reconstruction. Live with your head in the lion's mouth. I want you to overcome them with yeses, undermine them with grins, agree them to death and destruction, let them swallow you till they vomit or bust wide open. And then he says, learn it to the youngins. And then boom, dies. So that's his deathbed curse, which I thought was weird. I mean, just I guess saying we're at war with, you know, I mean, it doesn't say who we're at war with, but I think the implication is we're at war with, the, white people being in power over black people. And so he says that curse tends to ruin almost everything that he experiences. But then he says, that night I dreamed I was at a circus with him, and that he refused to laugh at the clowns no matter what they did. Then later he told me to open my briefcase and read what was inside, and I did, finding an official envelope stamped with the state seal. And inside the envelope I found another and another endlessly, and I thought I would fall of weariness. Them's years, he said. Now open that one. And I did, and in it I found an engraved document containing a short message in letters of gold. Read it, my grandfather said, out loud. So just every envelope he pulls out, it's years, years, years. And then one, it says, to whom it may concern, I intoned, keep this. And I don't know, used to in the past I would read this word, but I just even because he wrote it, and I feel bad not reading it as he wrote it. But I just feel like, I don't know, I feel uncomfortable saying it today. To whom it may concern, keep this inward boy running. And he says, I awoke with the old man's laughter ringing in my ears. It was a dream I was to remember and dream again for many years after, but at that time I had no insight into its meaning. First I had to attend college. That's how it was originally published. I think he said in the book, first I had to realize I was an invisible man, because that's how the book continues. But it's weird. It's like, to me, I don't know if you feel this way. To me, it's like his grandfather said, agree him to death and destruction, kill him with essentially yeses and grins and yes sir, no sir, that kind of like behavior, which is what he's doing. But he feels like, maybe he feels, I think I've heard sometimes of, what is it like? I've heard some people online talk badly about, say, who's the guy who directed Get Out? Is he Key or Peele? Jordan Peele, yeah. Have talked bad about Jordan Peele because he's married to a white woman. Or I think Donald Glover, who's Childish Gambino, who I think is also married to a white woman. Almost like, why are you marrying outside of race? And I don't think that that's the issue. It's that, I mean, maybe, am I wrong? Or I think the white women they're married to are just very white. Like, I mean, like as white as like the woman who was the police officer who shot the guy in Dallas. When you look at her and you're like, because like you hear like, oh, white officer. Okay, how white is she? And then you see the pictures and it's like, oh, like sorority girl white, like that white. And like when you see like Donald Glover and Jordan Peele's wives, they kind of look like that to me when I've seen them, but I can't remember if I'm remembering that accurately. And I wonder if maybe the reason their stuff is so good is they constantly feel like
they're getting targeted for, because a lot of black men in those high roles in society, if they're married outside of their race, they do get targeted. And it's talked about like on the radio all the time, like, why are you married to a white woman?
But not just by white people, by their own, by their family.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's mainly their peers, like their black peers that are basically saying like, he wants you to be like this, but you're married to a white woman. So why would you do that? Like, how could you tell us this and be doing that kind of thing? But I feel like that's what's making them make the music and the movies that they're making, because they are getting criticized for being with someone outside of their race.
Radius?
The whole thing about like people being mad about people marrying outside of their race and stuff like that. I saw this thing and they like compared it to something. It said it's like somebody talking about how the Holocaust was bad, and you're mad at them because they're married to a German. Like, it makes no sense that you get mad at somebody for that you don't believe what they're talking about or making, and you think that it doesn't matter just because they're not. I don't know how to explain it really. You know what I mean?
I think I can kind of understand it. Like, just every single person who's part of a race does not embody the qualities that one time those people did, right? So, like, I mean, the white women that Jordan Peele and Donald Glover have married are not they're not, you know, like they're not part of, they're not like, how do I say this? They're not white supremacists, obviously. But it makes, I wonder too, like if he was able to make Get Out. When you look at Get Out, I mean, it's so weird when you think about like, and how that applies here so well to like to this story, because when I watched Get Out in the theater, oh my gosh, it was so amazing. I watched Get Out in the theater. There was a lot of old white people there, like a lot. And we were watching it in the theater, and I was watching it, and like every time something happened, I was just like, I look around like at everybody, and I was like, "What are you thinking? What are you thinking?" And then some of the old people were like,
How's this movie called? I don't think I've seen it.
Get Out?
Get
Oh.
Out. I don't think I've seen it. It's a really good movie.
Well, let's say that like, it's so weird because it's like they've that's the thing. It's just the absurdity, like that like being black has become in fashion. Being black is cool. I mean, think of just how cool black culture is. I mean, it just is. Like black culture right now is just like the coolest thing. Like everybody, like hip hop is so cool, and like, you know, all that stuff. I watched, like, I was so pissed because has anybody seen the Feels Like Summer video? When it's like the cartoon, and like I'm watching it, and I saw in that video, I saw Snoop Dogg pop up, and I went, oh, these must all be people I'm supposed to know. And I don't. And I said, honey, come watch this with me. And so she watches, and she figured out like 10 more people. And then like I was just like, oh, I'm so pissed I don't know who these people are. And then like when I first, like, This Is America came out, like I was reading all the comments, I was like, what did I just watch? And somebody like figured out that like the very first thing he does when he shoots that guy is like some old pose from like.
It's an old pose from God, I can't remember.
But that video pissed a lot of people off.
Yeah, I mean, it did.
It brought good insight too.
Yeah, it did.
It brought good insight from back, like, because I guess the pants that he had on were like pants from some kind of army or something like that, and what they were doing was just, I can't remember because I looked up all the symbolic things that.
I saw a whole huge list of stuff.
A YouTube video where it was a white man that explained it, but he explained literally everything that was symbolic in that video. I mean, it was a really interesting video, like after you know what it is and then watch the video and you see like, oh, okay.
It was kind of like reading the story a little bit, where after I was done, I was like, well, I mean, in this story, I know what I've seen. And I'm a little uncomfortable with it. I know what I've seen. But that one, I was like, This Is America, I watched it, and I was like, I don't know what I just watched, but I feel like it was important. Like, that's how I felt. There's just, I don't know, like, the coolness of, the Get Out, the thing that was cool about Get Out was that it was like the coolness of, like, black culture had become a thing, and like white people had sort of realized that, but instead of that making them want to be friends with black people, they just wanted to exploit them again. Like it was the same thing over again.
Brain inside their bodies.
Huh?
It's like they wanted to put their brain inside of the black people's bodies.
Yeah, so they could like be black but still be white. Like it was the weirdest. It's so weird. Because that was what happened to that one guy, right? He was like, and he's in another movie now, which I think it was like Thank You for it's something like, but it's a movie where he's like a caller, like he telemarketer. What's that? Thank You for, I don't know. It's got that same guy who played the guy who was inhabited by somebody, but it's like you see him walking around, and he just wants to be a white guy in a black body, which is so weird. Yeah, it was this, but so I mean, it was still like this. Just in the and I wonder to what degree Jordan Peele would have been able to. I mean, sure, he's really smart, of course, but like if being married to a white woman sort of gave him the perspective, because I'm sure he hangs out with white people all the time and also black people all the time, so he gets both perspectives, and that sort of helps inform him. And I wonder if the same thing happens to Donald Glover, if he sees that kind of stuff happen, and so like he talks with all groups of people, and so he gets all those perspectives, so it helps him create what he creates. And I wonder if the same thing happened with Ralph Ellison, because he was a really smart, good writer from the beginning, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's all very intriguing to me. I saw something the other day. that it's important to remember when reading stories like this and not thinking like, oh, this isn't really relevant to us now. It was Chappelle like in a suit, like I think as the president on the episode where he was the president of the Chappelle show, and somebody posted on Twitter, they said, why do white people talk as if the civil rights movement wasn't only 50 years ago? And like in quotes, somebody says, you still use the suffering of your ancestors as an excuse of what's wrong with your community. And somebody said, ancestors? As a curse word. Ancestors? B word? You mean my grandma? Like, she's still alive. She's at home. What happened, grandma? But it's like people, it's weird. It's, everybody always feels like, oh, that's something that used to happen. That's not something that's still. And I think that getting back to that history problem, I'm pointing because you're a history major, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But I think that lack of people just don't really have a sense of history anymore. We forget. And I think that's also the problem of like vaccines. You know, people don't think that vaccines are real because they don't know anybody who's had polio or measles.
But it's coming back now.
Yeah, it's coming back now because people have never known anybody with measles, so they stop getting vaccines. People get measles. It's not gone.
Oh, and a guy came
It's
to
just
work the other day.
with measles.
And he was totally okay with showing me. I mean, and it was not okay, and I didn't want to see it.
Did
And
you like put on gloves and everything?
What did he have? He couldn't have had measles.
Don't touch. What was it?
That's very contagious. He shouldn't even have been outside.
he did. And I was like trying to keep a 5-foot distance away from him, and he was just practically took off his shirt and just showed me everything. And I was like, I swear to God, if you give me measles, I'm gonna find you and I'm gonna murder you.
You sure these weren't like meth
No,
sores?
they were. I mean, like, look up pictures on Google of measles, and they were measles.
You sure he didn't have, what do you call it? The adult chicken pox?
Shingle?
Shingle? I've seen that. That's gross. Yeah, that's the fact that that's even happening means people have no sense of history. I mean, it's hard to think back to before you were born. I mean, even if you know, like, it's hard to know. And it's just so hard to get a true sense of here's what reality used to be.
I just think that some people don't get the facts until they're like on that same situation. Because, you know, I'm Hispanic in Mexico. Same thing. But at some point you say I've been discriminated so much just because I'm Mexican, I'm a woman. Maybe I have an accent, I don't know. But I've been discriminated so much. So I know what he's talking about even now. And I know that things like this happen with other cultures, not just mine. And it's just so deep because he talks about a lot of issues that still happen today. Maybe in kind of like a different format, but still happen. Like when he says, when the grandpa says,
I'm sorry, are y'all talking about what we're talking about? Because it's really hard to concentrate. Brandon, can you stop talking? Are y'all talking about what we're talking about or something else? Because I can't concentrate on what we're talking about.
There's a bit of a tangent going off of the measles vaccine thing.
Oh, okay. Well, let's all try to kind of talk together because it works, I think, better that way. Yeah.
Yeah, so when the grandpa says we have to humble up to kind of like be in peace with, everybody else. Or maybe that's what he refers when he says, I'm a traitor because, I wanted to fight, but maybe I didn't. And that's still happening now. Sometimes when people from somebody or some other country comes here and tries to get a job, they have to humble up. And even if they're professionals, they still have to get a job as a, construction worker or something like that. And you have to put up with a lot of stuff. So it still happens, and these books really represented what that means for other people, for people that's being discriminated and judged and, people that go through all those things that these guy went through, kind of metaphor, I would say.
Well, I was thinking more symbolic with him picking up what he thought were coins off the electric rug. I immediately thought of the economic struggle that they must have been and probably still go through today. You can't, a man of color, any color, it doesn't matter, or a woman has a harder time getting a leg up on getting just satisfied money-wise. I thought immediately of an economic struggle symbolism right there.
Yeah, and I radios. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, which is,
Yes.
it's like a room. It's a room of rich white men, the higher ups of the community, and then a bunch of black boys sitting around the rugs. And one guy even said it's like they're praying, and they're just diving for the money, even though they know the carpet is electrocuted, and they're just laughing through the pain just to get the money they need. And it's surprising that they even came, like, just for this money. And they even say I think at the beginning somewhere they say that when the main character agreed to be there, they knocked one of their friends off for getting the night's pay. So I was surprised that they all went there willingly just to get like those few probably dollars and pennies.
They weren't even pennies.
I think the thing this story represents the best is how oppression affects you. So like knowing like these people could have all been like, even if they were a family, but because they're of the same race, they still hated each other and they still wanted to kill each other basically because it was survival of the fittest basically, even though they could have probably risen up against it and gotten out of there. Like, but that's what oppression does to people. It puts you up against everyone. Like you're not just against the people that are oppressing you. You're against the people that you're with too, because you're just trying to survive.
What?
Did you get that?
I got part of what you said, and then I started hearing it from over here too.
Adding to what she was saying about the money. Because even when the guy was like trying to offer him more money to just stop the fight because he wanted to say his speech and he didn't want them to fight. He just wanted to say his speech.
And that other dude was like, oh.
Yeah, I think they were only there for the fight.
But like,
they're like.
The other ones, I thought that they knew that they had to fight to get the money. Like one of the winners would get the money.
Because essentially, I mean, if you think about it, that's probably all they know.
Yeah.
They're so oppressed. That's literally the only thing they know because it's the only way they can probably get money.
Like just work.
Yeah.
Just fighting is how he gets work.
Like,
God, it really made me uncomfortable when I first saw it. What was the it reminded me of I think you're in the wrong class. You got me, but later. Really, we're still going. So, like when I first saw, like, I think that I had actually read this story before I saw Django, but seeing like what happened, like basically the same thing that happens here happened in Django. So uncomfortable. But yeah, that was like people's whole careers in that movie was like to be a fighter, knowing that one day you're gonna fight to the death, and like that was like that's terrifying. Now I'm hoping everybody also feels the same way that I feel here in letting, we don't have very many white guys in the room, but I don't want you guys to all feel like enemies. Like it's not like us versus them mentality. We're all kind of fit, but I will admit that as a white guy, I don't really feel discrimination anywhere, and I'm 6'2", so I mean. I don't even have to feel like short.
But even as a white woman, I mean, the only thing you get is for being a woman. You don't get any other discrimination about anything.
Well, besides pay.
Yeah, I mean, there's like the lower pay, but it's like sometimes you don't even realize the lower pay is happening. Oh, you do? I don't know. See, I have no idea.
I get paid as much as my peers.
But it's like, I think that probably one of the reasons and this is a 1302 class, so everybody has to take this class. But like, say, Brit-Lit. Well, some have white guys take Brit-Lit, but not a whole lot of white guys take Brit-Lit. And I think it's mostly because I think when it comes down, I mean, like, white guys don't really feel that discriminated against, so they just say, how do I start making money? And that's kind of like their only real concern. But like people will take humanities classes because they go, I realize there's something going on in the world that I want to change. And so they'll take those classes, but white guys feel no need to because nothing's going wrong for them, really. Eventually, someday when it does, I'm sure that my classes, I'll be like 70 years old, and I'll have tons of, white guys in my class who are like, let's read Brit-Lit. And I'm like, this is different. Actually, I probably wouldn't at that point even notice. And I'll be a minority. Well, that would be fun, wouldn't it? I'm not like fun, like interesting thing to think about, not like Yeah, I just want us all to feel like we're together in this room and not like there are some who are for and some against each other. We understand discrimination, but also like not everybody should feel guilty for not being discriminated against. I mean, should I?
You should.
I should feel guilty that I'm not doing something. I try to spend a lot of my time being aware of the discrimination that others go through. That's what I try to do.
We didn't choose just this life, just like they didn't choose their life.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're all born into what we're born into, and there's nothing we can do about that.
Only.
We just change how we act from there.
That's why you can't hate a person because of those things.
Yeah. It's a good time to stop, right? So maybe we'll get to the other two stories next time.
Had two people walking to this class.
We'll talk about lottery quick, then we'll get to Good Man Is Hard to Find, which is more fun.
And you're signing the
We'll do
essay
both.
next time?
Huh? Yeah, I'm also assigning the next essay at the end of class next time. But I'll talk about it in what
No.
discussion
I'm ready
post?
to write.
Yeah, I'll do that. I think I've already done it actually.
I get very motivated during nap time.
The discussion post, if he opened it, he opened it.
The next essay critical evaluation, while I will assign it next time, I'm probably not going to talk about it in detail until close before it's due.
Why?
Because most people write papers right before they're due, and because there's a lot to explain that takes some time. So that's why. I have reasons I've come up with over time that don't come to me right now.
Oh, okay.
It's like, I'll have to put all those together and then talk to you about them later. So, you have a good one. They might have any stuff you want to talk about regarding the literature. Yes.
The week 2 readings.
Uh-huh.
I was very bored by Battle Royal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean I've heard that kind of before. It was very vivid and detailed, and I was just like, that was, the personalities were very well developed. Those people, they're very realistic, and I just
Of the bad people, the good people, or all of them? All of them.
So that just as a starter off, that caught me incredibly with and that must be the writer, as far as him writing that makes me curious and I was curious about this because of your response to my your feedback about his experiences. That makes me curious what kind of experiences would lead to that piece? So I don't know, just that's about.
And see, one issue, was anybody else shocked because you didn't get any sort of warning going into Battle Royal? Yeah, I provided 0 warning. I was just like, here's some stories.
When they relate to Hunger Games, I figured that it was going to be some sort of...
That was a different story. That was lottery.
Lottery.
Yeah, so lottery did have that sort of relationship to Hunger Games. Battle Royal, for those who haven't got the chance to get to it yet, essentially starts out with young African-American guy, and his grandpa's on his deathbed, and essentially he was a nice guy all his life, and it's kind of important that you know. Let's look up Battle Royal here real quick in the book. Y'all probably know the page numbers better than I do. What now?
It's 1140 something.
1140 something?
Yeah.
Ellison. 1148, yeah. Good memory. So, essentially, the quote that his grandma says here, or not grandma, grandpa, is, so it's kind of like they'd been the, kind of nice, what would you call it, accommodating black family. They kind of went along with what was going on, because you can kind of tell from the quote. So he says, the grandfather says, and he's always been this nice, amenable guy, he says, "Son, after I'm gone, I want you to keep up the good fight. I never told you, but our life is a war, and I've been a traitor all my born days, a spy in the enemy's country, ever since I gave up my gun back in the Reconstruction. Live with your head in the lion's mouth. I want you to overcome them with yeses, undermine them with grins, agree them to death and destruction, let them swallow you till they vomit or bust wide open." And they said they thought grandfather had gone insane. They're like, oh, he's gone nuts. And then he says, he whispered fiercely, "Learn it to the youngins." And then he died. So it's like his last thought was, listen, we're fighting a war here. So, black grandfather says to black grandson this thing. But I mean, for the most part in his life, they were nice, agreeable people. And he tells them kind of on his deathbed, no, we're fighting a war. Like, this is a war and we're fighting it. But he essentially tells them to keep doing what they have been doing. Just understand you're doing it for the sake of war. So I don't know how the book continues. Battle Royal is actually the first chapter to Ralph Ellison's The Invisible Man. So isn't that crazy? That's the first chapter to a larger book, and it seems like it's its own story on its own. I think that's why it's always published that way. But from there, from this grandfather telling his grandson this, you see this thing where this grandson shows up to give a speech because he's done really well in school, and so he comes to give his speech. And when he shows up to give the speech to this kind of affluent white guys in town, he happens to show up and they've set up a battle royal. They're like, hey, why don't you just be part of this? And when you think battle royal, you're probably thinking these days, PUBG, Fortnite, throw a bunch of people in, last one standing, right? That's exactly what it was. There wasn't that many. It's probably like 10, 15 guys, 8. But they throw them all into this sort of makeshift ring, and there's a bunch of white guys around cheering and chanting, yeah, yeah, and they're all fighting each other. Then afterwards, I'm sorry, totally forgot to mention. He asked him if he participated in the battle royal. He says, hey, you should participate in this battle royal we have before you give your speech. He was like, okay. This guy who did really well in school and paid attention to his studies. Then, right after he does that, they bring out this girl as like the pre-show entertainment, I guess. Girl who's stark naked, has a tattoo of the American flag on her stomach. Dance around naked. The boys are all getting uncomfortable. Oh, I forgot to mention, it's all African-American boys. There are no white boys. Of course, I don't know if that was clear. So they start having this like fist fight, punch fight after this uncomfortable thing with this naked lady up on stage. And then after that, they say, okay, all right, get your winnings. And they put the winnings on this blanket and they say, go get them. But they electrified the blanket. So that when they went to go grab their money, they all got shocked. Turns out, too, the money wasn't real. It was all fake money. These rich white guys just had a hoot and holler and good time. All the privileged guys of the town. And then right at the end of the story, they let him do the speech, and he accidentally says the word equality in it, and they get like, he's like, oh, I didn't mean to say that, my bad. And then he continues on, and at the end they give him a scholarship and a briefcase or a bag or something. I can never remember, but he at the end has this sort of dream about his grandfather and how his grandfather's like, it's awful. 1148. Like he says, because we had the beginning about the grandfather and what the grandfather thought about how it was a war they were living all their days. He says, that night I dreamed I was at a circus with him and that he refused to laugh at the clowns no matter what they did, his grandfather. Said then later he told me to open my briefcase and read what was inside, and I did, finding an official envelope stamped with the state seal. And inside the envelope I found another and another endlessly, and I thought I would fall of weariness. And he said, them's years. He said, now open that one. And I did, and in it I found an engraved document containing a short message in letters of gold. Read it, my grandfather said, out loud. And it says, to whom it may concern, I intoned, keep this, I don't feel comfortable saying it in this context. To whom it may concern, I intoned, keep this in-word boy running. I awoke with the old man's laughter ringing in my ears. And he said, it was a dream I was to remember and dream again for many years after, but at that time I had no insight into its meaning. First I had to attend college. And really, I think that the end of the story actually says, like, first I had to realize I was an invisible man, I think is how it goes in the book, or one version of it. So, it's a pretty appalling story. I didn't warn anybody that, hey, there's going to be this story with rampant, terrible racism. And by the way, some people have told me, this story is racist. And I'm like, oh, really? I said, yeah, the writer is racist. He uses all the N-words all the time, and there's terrible stuff happening to black people. Well, the writer's black. So he's trying to sort of expose, what was going on around his time. Now, to what degree he went through anything similar, I don't know. Like, if he'd actually experienced people like that, like if he, because I haven't read his whole letters and things and seen like what he says that he experienced, and how accurate this experience was. But it could also be like maybe metaphorical or symbolic, I guess, where it's not really technically like moment for moment what he experienced, but maybe there's enough truth of the experience there to say that it's something that could have happened. I mean, when you read it, you believe it could have happened. You believe it's something that really could have happened. It doesn't seem outside the realm of possibility. I guess that's the scary thing.
That's always what makes writing really good writing, is you can maybe not even relate, but you can imagine. Like, you can really look at what's the author's trying to portray, and you can look at history in the world and go, oh, like it.
Yeah. We actually aren't probably going to go through this whole PowerPoint here, but there is one quote they say about character and characterization that I think is kind of relevant to that. But it says, the methods by which a writer creates people in a story so that they seem to actually exist are called characterization. And I feel like those who do it really well, it seems like these people, even if you don't at all relate, in a specific way to what they're going through, you can believe that they would have existed. Yeah, you can. And I always you can somewhat, I always heard that empathize is like when you've really gone through something. Sympathize is when you haven't, but I feel like, you want to be able to empathize. You want to be able to like feel things from someone's experience, not just have a similar experience or something like that. You want to try to think what they think, try to feel what they feel.
Switching gears a little bit, when I read the Yellow Wallpaper, I felt like a similar shock. Because I struggle with mental illness as well, and so like to read someone not be treated to read someone from a first person perspective, like start to kind of lose her marbles a little bit.
Yeah.
That was really like not earth shattering, but like shaking to me, because it was like, if I had grown up in that time, then like I would have been treated that way.
Oh yeah.
And so like, it's kind of like made me look at it like, look how far we've come, but also we still have a long way to go in how we treat people. And so it kind of got me to reflect on like my experiences with hospitals and like doctors and stuff like that, and her experience with her husband being her doctor, and like how the contrast of that, and I loved how it made me think, but also like as I was reading it, I got like really uncomfortable. I was like, I don't know, because I don't really know why it made me so uncomfortable, but like something about it like kind of struck my insides,
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really cool.
Well, there's two ways you could have approached a story like that. Right. There's a lot of different ways, but one of the two main ways I think in looking at that particular story is you could have approached it from, let's see her go through it and then overcome it. Mm-hmm. And we like to see somebody, we love underdogs. Granted, usually if it's like a football game where you're watching and you don't have any real relationship to the two teams, usually if you see somebody come down from behind, like from down, like really low points and then come up to win, you're like, oh, wow, that's amazing. You just kind of have respect in that scenario, and you're like, it's like a story. I've never been that kind of person. I usually don't root for the underdog in general. Not that I just don't like underdogs. It's just, for example, on the show that I watch, Big Brother, if somebody's playing really well, I always root for that person. I'm like, wow, they're doing a great job. I'm going to root for them. And people go, oh man, they've been in control for so long. I'm so bored. And I'm like, not me. I just love to see like somebody execute properly. Like that's all I want. I like to see somebody act rationally and execute a plan. I love seeing that happen. And some people are just like, I loves one person one week, but the next week they hate them because they're still in power. And they're like, oh, it's just so easy for them. And I'm like, kind of like, people hate the Patriots because the Patriots always win. And it pisses them off. They're like, oh yeah, they cheated. Maybe there was that one time.
It was proven.
Yeah, there was that one time. But I don't hear anybody going, they cheated that one time, so Tom Brady, he's not even good. He's good. I mean, he's good. He's good. But we're people who like to root for underdogs generally across society, and so I can see how that would work as a story of her overcoming, because we can root for her to be like, yeah, get past it, and she does, and we're all happy. I think it's more effective, like from when she was writing it, because there was really nothing. She realized, I guess, as she was, because did we talk about this? How she, Charlotte Perkins Gilman, she had postpartum depression, and she went to like the prominent doctor at the time, and he had a rest cure. And so she went through the rest cure. She realized fairly early on, like, it was making her worse. So she just stopped. Her solution was interesting. Her solution was to leave her newborn, I think Catherine was the name of the newborn.
That's great.
With a K. It was with a K. With her husband and his new wife. So they were going to raise her. And then she moved to California to become like a political activist and stuff. And she met somebody new and married them, but didn't have a kid this time. And so she ended up figuring out what she needed. But I don't know. I feel like that story wouldn't have been as effective at the time because she was trying to expose that nobody was really doing anything about this. Like this, everything, all their cures are jokes, and we need something to be done. And people don't regard female problems as real problems, which I don't know if it's still true today, but I mean it's still something that women are having to overcome. I mean, look at the Me Too movement. I mean, I didn't realize how widespread, that kind of crap still was. It's hard to believe that there's still men these days who use like power over women to get sexual favors and things, and then bestow some of that power on them. Like it's just hard. It's hard to think of. That Harvey Weinstein would be naked in a hotel room and then ask people to an interview there. Or you want a part in this movie, you got to come over here. Like that's just weird. Like that's weird that there are people like that. It's just strange to me. So, but I think that Charlotte Perkins Gilman laid a lot of the groundwork for women's rights today. Interestingly, she's not very well known for her political and activist stuff. She's well known for this story because I think it does a lot of good. But yeah, it's interesting seeing it from your perspective. I don't know what that perspective is like, but I'm glad to hear that you found something useful in it. And I'm glad that terrifying is the right response I've always had, because that's how I've thought of it. It's like, oh my gosh, this is awful. Like this is not what I would have wanted to see.
Because I do think you could come at it, because you can come at it from like the feminist perspective and like write on that and kind of like focus on that, and you can also kind of view it from the mental illness perspective, I think. Right. And so, because you mentioned that she could, like, it's kind of the underdog story where she kind of comes up on top, and I kind of thought about it as like, did she really like overcome it?
Oh no.
Like, and I was like, no, I don't think so.
No, Charlotte Perkins Gilman, the author, did, but she definitely made sure the character did not.
Right.
And she didn't even give her a name. Everybody else seems to have a name except her, so that we don't even think of her as a real person. It's like, well, she's a real person, but she doesn't get the privilege of a name because people were disregarding her, and I think that we're supposed to feel that.
Something that you had said about I just wanted to counter something that caught me when I first read The Yellow Wallpaper was like as I was reading it in the beginning, was John's, her husband's, demeanor toward her. Like,
Right. Yeah.
very controlling, like he knows better than her.
Right, how do you pronounce it? He treated her like a child.
Oh.
Infantilizing?
Infantilizing is the word I thought of. Because, like, to me, like, he kind of like, yeah, like what you're saying, like, he, like.
Yeah, and I feel like that applies to a lot of things today with people thinking and especially for mental health, thinking that they're not in the capacity to know what's best for themselves. And that's not necessarily true. Like,
right, exactly.
So that's something that caught me as well, and that when you said that, it made me think of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really touchy issue too. To, you know, people who are when the people are labeled, like, I guess, mentally incompetent to make certain medical decisions. I always found that to be kind of strange. Because it's like a case-by-case basis. You can't know with every single person. You still don't even know if you've got it right.
There's no standard.
Right, and even should there be, because every single situation is going to be different. We're a society of rules, right? We're a society, we have a rule for everything. We have a this happens, and this happens, and this happens. So to have those scenarios still where there are people who don't abide by the rules, like they're exceptions. We tend not to know what to do with exceptions. I think that's part of the problem with. Oh gosh, I had a specific area. Dang it! Dadgummit. Yeah, lost it. Totally lost it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Everything's sort of rule-based now, and if somebody goes outside the rules, we don't really know what to do with them. Oh, I think, yeah, that's what it was. We don't really know how to. That's why I think school shootings and shootings in general are getting like worse, like the mass type, because we tend to, like, people fit within the normal, like, society rules of how people are supposed to, I guess, act and be. But if they don't, then they like, well, we'll put them over here, and like they get kind of outside of social stuff, and then that can make things worse. And nobody's really paying attention to anybody but themselves. It can be problematic, to say the least. Feel like what do you call it? Today's like what would you call it? Like the mantra of our. Nah, it's not a good word. Somebody know what that means. The like prevailing like notion inside everybody else's, like in everybody's heads, kind of is like, I got to get mine. You got to. No, what is it from Oh Brother Where Art Thou? I got to do for me mine. That's what he says. Everybody's kind of worried about themselves, their immediate family. That's about it. If things don't go well outside of that, it's kind of, oops.
So, what are you saying? Like, I think I know what you're getting at as far as what you think is better, but can you directly say, like?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think people should be worried about the lives of others.
To what extent would you say? Because you're saying, we're sorry. You're saying that we're worried.
I'm not sighing at you. I'm sighing at how I can answer this question.
You're saying that we're worried, which I agree to before I start this, that we do need more concern with others, but to what extent without harming ourselves with the.
See, it's interesting. We should have people are. We have too much concern with some aspects of others and not enough concern about other aspects of others. I mean, I'm trying to figure out how we be politically neutral here. Let's go. This is two good examples. So let's talk about these two different examples that are kind of on both sides of the political aisle. So, well, I don't know. Well, yeah, because the real problem here, the real problem in shootings is not, if you look at it truly, it's not guns. And granted, Archie Bunker said something silly, which is like, what would you rather them be pushed out of windows? If they took away guns, people would figure out a way to kill people. But that's still not the real issue. Mass shootings, it's really about how many they can kill, not so much whether they get killed. Because, I mean, these days, the internet, I'm sure people could just start figuring out ways to build bombs instead. And, I mean, bombs can kill far more. Imagine if somebody, I mean, you can make a bomb, too, and just leave it ahead of time, right? So, I mean, that's terrible. If somebody had done that, remember that nightclub shooting, like 52 people died, or 51? Or somebody put like a bomb underneath the stage of that concert where the guy was shot in Vegas, or the people were shot in Vegas. How many people end up getting killed in that? Was it 75? It was a big shooting. There's 62. I think, bombs are even worse in terms of like the possible numbers because it's instantaneous and just however many people are there. As long as you can guarantee there'll be a crowd. But the real problem there is that we're not looking closely at the mental health of these people, these individuals. Everybody's, I wouldn't say that, wanting to kill hundreds of people is a healthy desire. I don't think. So I have to assume that there's at least some degree of mental illness going on there. And mental illness has such a range, too. I mean, there could be simple things like depression all the way to, things like, psychotic and homicidal episodes. Yeah, I mean it's a huge range, but I think even still these days there's like a stigma where we act like it's not even real. A lot of people don't. There's a lot of people's families I'm sure go, don't want you to be on pills or something like that. There's like a stigma of having to be on pills for something in many areas in the South. But guns are not the real issue. It's the mental health. Yet, if you look in other areas, like we try to, some people want to, decide whether or not people should be able to defend their families. And the other side of things are like, we'll take away all guns so that some people can't do shootings. It's like some people are like, yeah, but what if I get robbed? And not necessarily robbed, but what if somebody comes and attacks my house and, they kill us and I don't have a gun to shoot back? Yes?
In areas where everyone's allowed to bring a gun into, there's less shootings.
I can't verify that. Might be, but without anything in front of me.
Defend themselves.
I would have said that just what do you call it, not a folksy way, but just instinctual way until recently, because there was that shooting down near San Antonio at a church. Granted, there was another time where I think it was like there was some sort of Muslim rally and somebody went to go shoot at the Muslim rally and the cops noticed and shot the guy down before he had a chance to do anything. But that was like in Garland or something. That didn't make a whole lot of news because usually if not a lot of people die, it doesn't make the news. And then that's another issue. People think they can get famous by killing lots of people, which is absolutely true. A society obsessed with fame. Yes?
Can I clarify my question? That might help you.
In just a second, let me finish my other thought. And then I'll hear your clarification of question to see if I ever hit those two things. So we want to control other people's access to guns and things. Yet in another, people on the same side of the political aisle who want gun freedom also want to control whether or not people can get abortions. So it's controlling somebody else's body. So people say, well, we should all have freedom. We should all get to do what we want. That's what we should all be able to do. Yet still control somebody else's. Like I said, you can't take away my guns. But then in the same scenario, you can't take away, my right to receive an abortion. I mean, if somebody's raped. I mean, there's people who don't even think that should be like, you raised the kid because it was God's will. God's will was you to be raped. Makes no sense. Makes no sense at all. And I'm not talking from a religious perspective. I'm talking about, I don't know when those kids. Just back up from that one because I could get a little heated there. But clarify your question.
What I'm asking is, what satisfies your moral need to help others? Okay, so you're saying that others need. What was these? Okay, not. You had said.
Are you asking essentially how far do I think we should go?
Yes.
I can't answer that. Because the reason is if I answered that and I told you exactly how far I think we should go in multiple areas of society, it would immediately become how clear my political beliefs are. And I would prefer people not to think that I just don't agree with them from the outset of a class.
I feel like there shouldn't be a limit because, depending on how far you go, describes you as a person. So if we were all to please people at a certain level, then we'd all be the same.
Yeah. And see, here is another, and this is related in a weird way. This relates to the Gilman thing, but in a different way. Like, if we take, let's say something like, if we take liberalism to its logical conclusion, open and concerned more for other. And if you think liberal and conservative, take those two words. Liberal is the word itself means open, open-minded, open, that kind of thing. Conservative means conserve, take care of one's own. And if we take liberalism to its logical conclusion, it's actually not that great. It's assumed that everything went perfectly liberally, right? Everything went perfectly, and then everybody gets. Eventually, over time, nobody will even see differences in others, right? They'll be like, everybody's equal to me, and I see them as equals. And so what happens is everybody, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with people from different races marrying each other at all. I'm just saying, like, imagine nobody in the world stayed within their own racial or ethnic group when they did, they were marrying. Imagine nobody did that. Everybody just kind of back and forth between races. Culture would be erased over time. Everybody would be exactly the same complexion, and culture would be erased. Granted, there would be geological differences between where people are, but if we take it to its complete and total logical conclusion, if everybody found everybody equal all the time, then we wouldn't have culture. I mean, we'd have one big culture, and that's generally, have you ever noticed how anytime you read something in sci-fi, y'all probably don't read a lot of sci-fi, but some of you might. If you watch like a sci-fi movie, they go to a different planet. That planet always has everybody speaking the exact same language and has the same culture. I always thought it was so strange. Like they don't have like the homogeneity that we like, or heterogeneity that we do. Like people aren't just different. It was very strange to me. But I think you would argue that your culture is very significant, wouldn't you? Like whatever your culture is, you feel like it's important to you. You think it's very important to who you are. And can you imagine that just going away?
Well,
and it's already starting to.
I kind of.
You can say you disagree. It doesn't bother.
Yeah, I disagree.
Yeah.
Culture is, for me, culture is kind of like geographical. So I mean, like people in India or people in Russia or people in, like even if races merge and even if people intermarry and even if people like are like kind of monochrome, kind of, you know, like. I don't think that will erase culture because of how big our Earth is.
Yeah.
Because like even in like different areas of Texas, like or different parts of this like class like so society class system basically. Like if you're like wealthier, for example, you have a different culture than someone who's not as wealthy. Like the culture is so vast and like expansive.
Yeah, but I was also talking about taking liberalism to its logical conclusion. Okay. So that would also mean like there wouldn't be wealthy and unwealthy. There would be everybody at essentially the same wealth level. Anybody can pursue anything that they want to, anytime, travel anywhere they want to, anytime. There would be no financial burden.
With Japanese heritage, I don't think that they'd still have a different culture than somebody who's in America with Japanese heritage, for example. Like even like if they have like the same exact, I don't know, like even if they have the same mix of like whatever's going on and like I disagree.
No, I understand. But I think of like, and yes, let me hear what you have to say and I'll keep formulating my thoughts.
I feel like culture-wise, it'd take a very, very long time to...
Oh yeah, I'm not talking like immediate. I'm talking thousands of years.
Yes, but at the same time I'm thinking, well, like, some might get erased, but because of certain cultures merging together, it might create new as well.
Yeah, that's possible, yeah.
So like, while maybe cultures are erased, new ones will emerge. I feel like that's just human adaptation in a way. It's just like we're gonna change eventually. It's gonna happen. It's just how we really are. I'm just going on the culture thing. I'm not really going for the whole liberal thing. Just cause like I can't really see humans becoming a single melting pot of the same thing.
Yeah, because it's hard to imagine. I was just talking about, and I wasn't talking about like that's what everybody's going to become, as much as I was saying if like we take pure liberalism to its logical conclusion, everybody thinks of everybody exactly the same and everybody has the same access to all resources at all times, then I think eventually something like that would happen. So it's ironic that I think a belief system which is a celebration of like different cultures and realizing the individualism of different people could end up resulting in less individualism over time, which I think the same problem exists too, by the way. I'm not just being on one side. Conservatism as well. I mean, you're seeing the issues now with pure conservatism and how far it can be taken with, y'all heard of the problem with the DMV in Texas right now? Y'all heard of that? They're talking about shutting down Greenville's DMV. Like completely shutting it down. They've already done it?
Yeah, I think they did.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not the only one. There's been like 54 to 57, I think, DMVs in the state of Texas on the chopping block. I mean, they're saying like they want to shut down inefficient DMVs because they waste money. But the people who go to the DMV, who are waiting in the long lines, remember Greenville's DMV, you ever gone to it? You just wait forever. So, right? Do you think it's like, where would those Greenville people go now?
Sulphur Springs.
Rockwall, Silver Springs. Silver Springs is a closet, right? I mean, it's like this room where they do everything.
Yeah,
so if everybody from Greenville starts going to Silver Springs, then you have big ass lines, people trying to get into this room this size. It'll be like registration for college day, right? Be like arena registration. You're all like, they're signing in, and they're like next, and you're like, man, this feels like Greenville. Fancy that. Because you took everybody who used to go to one place and wait in a long line. Now you have them all going to different places and waiting in bigger lines. They're like, you're no longer inefficient either. They're going to shut down the whole DMV. And then the only people who can get stuff on the DMV is to go online. And DMV too. And the same issue is going with schools, right? They're talking about, well, if your school gets a bad score, we're going to shut it down. Where do those kids go? They just don't learn anymore? I'm like, well, you're in a bad neighborhood. School shutting down. Sorry, kids. Everybody's homeschooled now. Good luck. This doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, everybody's purely conservative all the time, pays no taxes. There was actually a town in Texas, like near San Antonio, that tried this, and oh man, they had widespread corruption and no tax money. They ended up not having running water. Like all kinds of crazy stuff was happening. But it's just, we need a balance of different ideologies for the world to sort of, I think, continue. Yeah, if anything gets too much power, it ends up corrupting that power and things. I think that there's got to be balances. A middle ground. And I think as a result of that, cultures will be, maintained, and we'll have changes in cultures and different cultures and things like that. But I'm always shocked. Are y'all shocked to see sometimes like what you would consider to be like a third world country, and you see like an Instagram video, and you're like, they do the same crap there that we do here, and you feel like that a lot of times it's like, I think I saw like a Kiki challenge video in India. It was like a guy and like, I don't know what the outfit's called, but the huge like, I can't remember the name of it was like I don't think it was India. I think it was the Middle East actually. I apologize. I'm not great with geographics and knowledge of geography, but and where people are from different. But he was wearing what's it called? Where it's got like the line around the hood, and then it's like a full flowing robe.
I know what you're talking about.
The men wear, and like the heat, and it's white. But anyways, he gets out of his car and he's like walking next to his car. I saw one where some guys were doing like the Kiki challenge with some ox, I think, that they were like plowing through a field. And I was like, if you don't know the Kiki challenge, you get out of the car like an idiot and you let the car go. But they did it with ox in a field. And I was just like, that means the world is opening up to everybody now. Everybody has access to the world. China has access to an edited world where there's no sex. But for the most part, everybody has sort of huge access to the world now, and the cultures are going to start merging. And think of too, if you know anybody who, like, say you have like a family where somebody where a white mom married a black dad, or a white mom married like a Hispanic dad, or like a black mom Hispanic dad. Like, there's a merging of cultures there, and sometimes bits of one culture go away, and then the other one fills in the rest, and make completely change like the foods that are eaten, or what everybody does on Sundays, or everything can change. That happens when anybody gets married, really. Anybody comes together at all, as you kind of have a mixing of cultures, and it's interesting. It really is cool. But it's hard to also think about what happens if we do that over and over and over and over again to the point where there's no culture left. I mean, we already see like Native American tribes, like the languages are completely lost. Isn't that kind of scary? The languages could be lost. I find that terrifying. But I mean, maybe it's just the natural order of things, and eventually it happens, and I guess
So you're terrified of change.
Huh?
Joking.
No, I'm not quite that old yet. I'm not terrified of change. I'm just saying, like, I would hate for everything to go away. I don't want to see everything become just one big neutral middle. That very much bores me.
There's no challenge. There's no nothing to overcome if you always be the same.
I read a great book. By Joe Haldeman. Has anybody ever heard of him? He wrote a book called The Forever War. Anybody had a chance to read that? Really good. I won't tell you like the plot of the story, but it talks about different areas throughout history. And one of the like areas you kind of visit Earth, and like it's now, and like people are like smoking and things, and there's like the patriarchal culture, and like he leaves and he comes back, but it's like way later. And this isn't like actually a huge part of the story; it's just part of the story. But he comes back, and it's now considered a mental illness to be straight. Homosexuality is considered to be the default. Anybody who's straight is considered to be mentally ill. Nobody smokes anymore. It's illegal. And like the people who were meeting up with him, they're like, "Yeah, we've heard about you." And he's like their commanding officer. So they're told, he's from a different time, just deal with it. Like, he's your commanding officer. And they're like, okay. And then like later on down the line, everybody on Earth, they've just figured out the most easiest way to everybody stays equal is everybody's a clone of the same person. That sounds nice, doesn't it? Like, I don't want that. If you take everything to, it's like, well, we don't want any kind of, everybody's inequality. We don't want that. It's like, well, everybody's the same. Which all the genetics of everybody mixed together. Boom. Solved. I was like, that sounds like a nightmare.
Well, when you put it that way, it does sound like a nightmare. But I kind of like think that you can have like people be equal, for example, and still have different opinions. Equal rights, yet still a diverse. And I feel like that's how we should always be. Yeah. And I feel like, I don't think there should ever be a stigma between people of marrying across cultures, and I know there still is. Oh my word! I watched a YouTube video one day it was I think it was a Chinese guy, or it might have been Korean, bringing home his black fiance, and the mother wouldn't talk to them. Said, "Don't bring that woman in my house." She said, "How could you ruin your family like this?" I was like, my gosh. Like, it's crazy to me that stuff still exists today. I think there should be, like, equality of, like, but, and granted, the very nature of humanity, like, we tend to prefer people within our cultural groups, and that's going to probably last forever. And people who go outside of their cultural groups, it's usually for love. And I read a study on that a long time ago. It's like, for example, like if somebody is white but adopted by a black family, and they grow up completely around black people, they're probably going to marry somebody who's black because that's their culture. You tend to marry within your culture, and so it's not just about race. So I don't know. It's intriguing stuff, and this is all from yellow wallpaper, which is weird.
Did you get something you said about, like, when you first started this about the one big melting pot thing? It sounded exactly like something Matt White said. Is that, like, did you happen to get that idea from
him? No, we probably just have similar ideas about various things.
Okay.
I have discussions with him all the time, and we've probably talked about this before in some degree.
It's interesting because, like, I don't remember where it is in the book, but one of the readings that we did, one of the assigned readings was the one with the cell phones. The guy talking about how, I don't know, maybe I read the wrong thing, but, but anyway, there's an essay that this guy does about, like, the concerns he has about cell phones and how.
Oh, yeah, as part of the blue readings, yeah.
Yeah, and so he.
Yeah, he seemed kind of like an old crotchety guy to me.
Yeah, he seemed kind of whiny, but like.
I literally wrote that in the margin. I think I wrote the word whiny.
But I was like talking to my mom about it, and she kind of like, because we read it together, and so like she had like a kind of a different view than I did, and she kind of had like kind of a little bit more sided with him than I did.
Oh yeah.
And so I was like, he sounds like a whiny old man, and she was like, well, I kind of see where he's coming from. And so
I wrote a paper on it last semester.
About the
dangers of technology.
Oh yeah, dangers of technology.
How it's dumbing our society down.
Yeah, and I mean I have those same worries. I had them a long time ago because of an episode of television it was an episode of The Outer Limits, where it was like everybody had access to this, like everybody had a mental link to this, essentially like Wikipedia where you can know things at all times, but then something wipes that out and there's only one guy left who actually reads books. And I have to ask him, like, how do you read? How do we learn things from these things you're reading? Because they didn't know. Because they would always just, like, there was surgeons who had no actual training, who they would just, it was essentially, they were like Wikipedia surgeons, where it just told them everything they need to know all the time. It was kind of crazy. They were only surgeons because they had, like, good hand-eye coordination. That was it.
There's an example that said if you were to be sent to jail today for whatever reason, could you remember the phone numbers of the people you can get in contact with?
No, but I mean, like, that was a form of technology too. I think the scariest thing is that we have, female self-image is getting worse over time. Specifically, well, I think male too, but female worse so.
Photoshop?
Yeah, as you see women in their Photoshop, nobody's real anymore, and so you're judging yourself against unreal expectations, which is terrifying. That's what I see as the most dangerous.
Snapchat filters, they like contort your face so that it's like a slimmer face.
Women are actually asking for doctors, cosmetic surgeons, to make them look like their Snapchat versions. Like they're going in there and they're asking. You can't ask for bigger eyes. So I don't really know what you're gonna. I mean, your eyes are like 10-20% larger on Snapchat when you get like the pretty filter, which is terrifying. It like thins your chin and makes your eyes like 20% bigger. It's weird.
Why do you know that percentage?
Huh? I read that article. It was like it was shocking to me, and I was like, I really don't want anybody to have Snapchat. So I put my foot down and I said, nobody in the family's gonna have Snapchat. My daughter and my wife have it. And they use the filters. I specifically request no filtered pictures when they send them to me because I don't like to see them that way. Let's see, what can we hit with? So that's yellow wallpaper, which is last week. But see, this is what I want to do, is explore ideas. I think like this is the most interesting, because all my quizzes for the most part are just the facts of the story, like what happened, when did it happen. That's what my quizzes will mostly be. But your essays are all going to be like exploring neat ideas. And so I feel like that's mostly, if we do that for the most part, that's going to be the most interesting thing we can do in this class and the most useful thing for you guys. Even though you might at times, because you don't have anything to look at, you're going to be, participate, like be like, I want to throw something out there. So stay awake. Man, that other class, it was so lively. Did anybody happen to watch the video that I posted on Sunday of the other class? No, nobody does. But they were like so chatty about like everything. They were just like, let's talk about this and this other thing. Oh my gosh. And I was just like, whoa, okay, so we're not going to talk about plot. And they were like, no, we're not. Okay. So I feel like that's kind of it's more fun anyway. So Battle Royal, scary. Yes.
I have a question. What do you think about the Misfits' reason for going into jail? Like, do you really think that he did kill his father? Or do you think that he didn't, it was false, or that he did, but it was traumatic enough to him in his mind that his mind changed it to where he doesn't think he did it. That sounded weird. He doesn't think that he did the murder. He convinced himself for like the good portion of his life in the beginning that he was a good person, he's gonna work and do all this. And then after going into jail, he convinced himself deep down he's not a good person. He had a good beginning, but he's not a good person.
Like a trauma response?
Like a what?
Like
Trauma response.
Like, wait, I think you posted that on the discussion thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was hers.
Because this is something I'm really just like, ooh, I want to know what other people think.
I have two opinions. One is maybe, probably. Because I think, I don't know, I don't want to necessarily, I don't want to like categorize him as a guy like that, but given his zealotry and this passionate belief in ideas that don't even really seem formed, it's like he sounds like he has a rule set, but he also doesn't seem like, the rule set's not something we can make sense of in the story. We don't have enough time. He doesn't give us like his whole ideology. So I mean, I'd say that's definitely within the realm of possibility, is that it's like that. I wonder to what degree, and this is my second opinion, I wonder to what degree we really have to know that. I mean, I think either whether you suspect or don't suspect that that's the case, I think both sets of people can be right. I think it makes more sense that he really did kill his dad, and he's either convinced himself that he didn't or something, so where he doesn't actually feel like he did it. But as long as we know now, he's nuts. I don't know about nuts. He believes in something. It's just not what.
Just illusion of your view.
Yeah. It's difficult to really place him. People always focus on the misfit for this story. Me, I usually focus more on the grandmother.
The grandma annoyed me too much, so.
It was. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into this. We'll probably get most of this into this next time, but I'm just going to point this at me so I can sit on my desk. I used to do this a lot, and I don't do it anymore, and I want to. I can think better when I. I don't know if that's going to be actually helpful at all. I'm probably on like the edge of the image, but I always thought the most unique thing about that story, and the story I like the most is, or the aspect of the story I like the most, is that we're given this like sitcom most of the time. You know what a sitcom is? Like situational comedy. You know, like a Friends or like Home Improvement or something. Do they even have those anymore? Oh, there's a new one on CBS. I keep getting advertised at me every time I watch Big Brother. The Neighborhood looks really funny. It's like a neighborhood's always traditionally been like a black neighborhood, and a white family moves in, and like Cedric the Entertainer, is he the one? Is he still alive?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because I know there's Bernie Mac's the one that died. Because I knew one of the big four had died, but yeah, Kings of Comedy. But Cedric the Entertainer is like one of the people in the neighborhood, and like it's how this white family interacts with like the black people in the neighborhood, and that's where all the comedy is. But you know, it's goofy and it's fun and it's light, and that's what it's meant to be. And I feel like that's the beginning of the story. It's goofy, it's fun, it's light. Kooky grandma, what a crazy old lady, right? And we just keep reading about crazy old lady and the annoying kids and the henpecked husband who. He just does whatever, like, well, not henpecked. He's more of like the dad who's just trying to get through it. And he's like, we can just make it through this vacation. And then we have the wife who seems not even to be a character. She just exists. Yeah, she's got a baby. It's fine. And a cat. Got a racist grandma. She's very racist. But she believes in respect. And then like we get this like goofy thing the whole time, and it's like even when like they have their little wreck, it's like told in like a goofy. I almost imagine like a car like spinning in slow motion in the air, almost like an Anchorman 2 where like they hit like the little the whole like Winnebago thing is like spinning in slow motion, and like things are hitting people and stuff. And like, why is this bowling ball here? And like, it's hit somebody in the face. But the whole story is goofy like that until everybody gets systematically murdered one at a time, and it's just the weirdest thing. And so I probably don't focus as much on the misfit as I should, because I'm always focusing on, it's weird, but it's like, have you ever thought about like in a story we kind of need a bad guy? Mm-hmm. Without a bad guy, like, stories are boring. There's no conflict. Yeah. What?
Like an antagonist.
Yeah, we have to have somebody who, like.
We need somebody to lose. I feel like it's like, we need somebody to root against, so that when the good guy wins, it makes us feel good for some reason.
Wreck-It Ralph kind of deconstructs that whole idea, doesn't it? Like it's like, I hate being the bad guy. I mean, it's like a bad guys like group where they get together and talk about how sad it is that they're bad guys. Like it was like Bad Guys Anonymous or something like that. It was kind of funny, but we need somebody to be bad. So it's like I've always, and I've taken this to like a crazy extreme where, like in the story, we need Misfit to be there. We kind of need all the family to get killed for something to happen. I kind of am thankful that the Misfit exists in the story, because man, it's kind of, does anyone like, you go through the beginning of the story and you hate the grandma. You're like, man, I hate this lady.
Yes.
Somebody just needs to do something about her. And then here's a Misfit. And some people, did y'all see the Misfit coming? Because I didn't.
I did.
I tend to follow along with a narrative and not look for like the little side breadcrumb things. I tend to be really snowed by foreshadowing usually, and I usually have to go back and read again to catch foreshadowing. But she's like, oh, watch out for that Misfit. And I was just like, it's just something they're missing. There's something they're mentioning. And then later I go back and I'm like, oh, of course it was being mentioned the whole time for this reason. But then Grandma is just sitting there pleading on her knees. And first of all, she isn't even pleading for her family. She's just pleading for herself. So I was like, hate her more. Her family goes and gets shot in the woods. Even the baby, I'm assuming. And then, because there's enough gunshots for the baby, right?
I don't remember.
I think.
I thought there was only 4 babies.
Because there was 1 shot per time that people were brought back, I believe. I would have to read that over.
I think there might have only been 2 shots per. Oh, but that doesn't necessarily mean that. Because you could have the mother holding the baby and shoots both. I mean, it's not like that's not outside the realm of possibility. But then you have her like pleading on her knees for her life, and I was just like, kill her, and he does. But it was just like, it's a story. It's not like real life, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people just this weekend there was a range of emotions all over the Dallas area about this lady. The police officer, I'm sure y'all heard about that, right? There's people going, man, yeah, look, she's not on trial for murder yet. This is ridiculous. And then this morning it comes out, or maybe yesterday it came out, manslaughter. And interesting, I don't know, I can't corroborate this, but I saw some guy and he posted, he says, I've been listening to the talks of, it seemed too weird for it to not be something that had at least a realm of truth, an aspect of truth to it, or some modicum of truth. But he said like that the issue they were having with DPD was they wanted to bring charges of manslaughter. When they described it to a judge said, I can't grant that as manslaughter, that's murder you're describing. And he's like, no, listen. And like they would explain it again, he's like, no, you're describing murder, not manslaughter. He's like, I can't bring charges of manslaughter because that doesn't make any sense here. And so then that's why they brought in like the Rangers, and then when the Rangers did their investigation, they came up with manslaughter. But then they started looking into the case, and apparently they didn't want it either. They were like, oh man, this is not going to be easy. But I have no idea. I still want to know all the details of it. But there was a lot of people, I'm sure some people inside their heads this weekend were thinking, I hope she gets the chair. Was anybody like seeing like black guy get shots in his own apartment, and was anybody else like me going, please don't be some white lady? And then it comes out it's a white lady. I was like, of course it's a white lady. I was just like, please don't, like make it a another black officer, or like Hispanic officer or something where like not some white lady. I was like, not again. Not I'm having to hear the same story in the news over and over and over again, just with different people, you know. And of course it was, and I was like, of course it was. You know, it was just like, well, who else would it be, you know? Did anybody feel that way, where you're just like, of course it is? And I wasn't saying that for like, I just feel like, how can white people be that dumb that often? I just am shocked. It just shocks me. And then we still need to know whether or not it was a. But I'm sure some people this weekend where they were hearing those stories and being like, oh man, that woman, she better get the worst. You know, she better get it. You know.
How would I find that story? Like, what are some keywords in that I could use to?
Dallas police officer Google search, and it will come up.
Okay.
At least if you search it today.
All right.
You might have to add female in the future, or female September 2018. But just, I don't know. I felt like, I mean, I'm sure some people this weekend were feeling about her like they're feeling about the grandma. Now, I should caution you that if later you're writing a research paper and you're trying to relate stories to the real world, I prefer isolated murders, not be scenarios that you're trying to relate. So, like, nobody write about the Dallas police officer lady. I mean, you could write about issues of race in general regarding police activity. I think that would be okay, and use occasional examples from various. Was that me? Sound like it was from here.
Something dropped.
Over there? Okay. But yeah, it's a fascinating subject. Let's get into it. Man, we already ran out of time. Yeah, looks like we're not going to have any trouble doing this. So we have to make sure we talk a lot about Good Man It's Hard to Find next time, and I don't know, maybe mention the lottery a little bit. I'm less interested in the lottery, even though I signed it. It's not my favorite.
It's a very overused concept, in my opinion. Like,
and that's probably because of recently. I mean, I think until the Hunger Games came out, we hadn't seen that concept used a lot, and then all of a sudden, just one person takes the fall for everybody. It became like this big thing, and it was all over the place.
And
one
like
unique
outdated rituals.
It became almost a meme.
Yeah, it's almost meme worthy now. All right, y'all have a good one.